Hey everybody, Mike here with my special guest, my very special friend Andy Lara. Say hello, Andy.
Hey, what's up?
Why that sound? I mean, you've forgotten some of our other sounds, right? I mean, that's
I have. Maybe it's just due to the topic of what we're talking about today.
Lord, yes.
There's relevance.
Yeah, no kidding. Where are all my sounds, Andy? Didn't we had that movie sound? And we had
Yeah.
I don't know where it is.
Well, I mean, you seem to the last show, or not the last one, but the one before that with Kevin number 2. It seemed like you were on it, man. Like you had it out. There it is.
The crickets?
There it is.
Oh no, that's That's for me. That's solely for me. But yes, we could do better than that. Anyway, Andy, how are you? Well, what's the weather like in San Clemente, California today?
Oh, I'm well. The weather is still beautiful. I believe it is in the 80s. It got up to 90 yesterday.
Whoa.
The water is like 73 to 75 degrees still. It's unbelievably wonderful.
That is for those of you on the East Coast, that is frigid in the Atlantic, but in the Pacific, that is bath water.
Yeah. It's nice when you get out in the morning and you try to, if you surf, the air right now is actually colder than the water. So that's
unbelievable.
That's nice.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
And so Andy, you've got, of course, your array of podcasts right now. You're doing something with Ronnie too. What are you doing with Ronnie?
Well, with Ronnie, that's our Facebook Live show that we do on Vox Community's page.
Got it.
So we're doing a frequent show. I mean, we'd like to do it week to week, but our schedules get a little bit muddied up. But it's been kind of a way to jump into other topics of conversation happening in and around the community. We're doing probably I think we're going to do like 6 weeks on talking about power dynamics and leadership. And, after all the Willow Creek stuff and all of that, it just seemed like it'd be a worthy conversation to pull in some voices around how did we arrive at such a power structure? How did, what is our critique of? What's the alternatives?
Yeah. Oh, wow. That'll be fantastic, bud. Because you're a man who's always sought power. We all we all
Right.
know that if we know you. No, but I think that's really good. That'll be very interesting. So that's on the Vox Community Facebook page.
That's on the Vox Community Facebook page. And then I've talked about it on the show before, but that app Anchor, that does like podcasting like right from your phone. So I decided I joined in on some other friends that are doing keto. So they were like, let's try keto for 30 days. Right.
Oh, wow. The diet.
And the diet, right.
Because keto to me sounds like a martial art.
Right. Judo, keto, karate. Yeah. It's all in there. It's the martial arts of eating a certain way. But anyhow, I thought it would be fun to actually try and do a podcast on Anchor that's just about like me doing 30 days of keto. So I'm going to give that a shot. So I'll post some stuff even on my website at andylikeswords.com and see how that goes. But I just wanted to try the platform and see how well it went.
How's that different from just doing a voice memo? Can you edit? Can you polish it up more?
Yep, you can edit. It has actual mobile editing tools right in the app, so you can slice and dice, cut stuff out. It gives you, once you do a recording, right after it even offers some background music if you want to do like background music for the whole show.
Come on.
But what's cool is then once you finish the show, it does have publishing that goes out to multiple platforms. So you can publish to iTunes right from Anchor.
Wow.
So that's the difference. With voice memos, you're actually just doing the audio recording. So in this case, it streamlines one of the bigger hangups for folks who get into podcasting. It takes out a lot of the technical work. So that's the beauty of it, is I think that's why I'm excited about it, to see if it really catches on. But it's cool. I'm checking it out.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
We do have a bit of a depressing topic today, though. I want to talk a little bit about the guy in Southern California. I didn't know him, but he's a pastor. He was 30 at a church called Inland Hills in Chino. And he took his own life last week, right? It was last week.
Yep. Yeah, it was last week.
And I was just really struck and kind of hit with because the thing that was absolutely crazy was that a couple of weeks before he took his life, he actually went before his church and kind of talked about the nervous breakdown he'd had and the journey towards health and wholeness. And I actually watched that teaching, and you know, it was surreal because he you know, came across, of course, relatively healthy, and he was up there with his wife, and she seemed to be pumped to be back to the church, and so I think there, you know, we've talked every now and again, of course, about mental health issues, but there was just something about this one that really hit, and so I went on and I watched the sermon a couple of weeks ago. It was like I think it was like August 12th, where he kind of opened up about it, and they were so, like, I related to it on a personal level, of course, but also, you know, along the lines of conversations we've been having for years and years and years about mental health in the church, and mental health as it's seen in some parts of the faith community, and so I just wanted to talk a little bit and get your thoughts on this. I don't know how much did it get a lot of coverage out there because he was relatively local.
Oh yeah, like my Facebook feed and Twitter feed was literally flooded. Like I couldn't, like the day after or whatever it was. I mean, I popped on Facebook and there was at least maybe 10 or 15 people who were sharing it and posting it. I mean, that's because working in the church space, obviously. So there's a lot of different leaders that knew him. But then there was actually friends, like, you know, 1 degree. I think Ronnie, I can't remember if Ronnie has met him or has worked with him, but I think he knows, he's like 2 degrees from him. He's like, he knows him. Like, he was like, oh yeah, man. Like I've met him, I've hung out with him. And so, you know, yeah, that was, it's definitely been present over here and a topic of conversation with us for sure.
And then his wife posted an unbelievably heartbreaking kind of letter to him on their blog. And
I didn't get a chance to read that. I saw it floating around, but I didn't get a chance to read that yet.
Oh my goodness. Oh, it's like, I'm going to save it just because it's, I mean, how do you even write something like that? But it's incredible. You know, she obviously speaks to him out of the rawness of her heart, but she says some things about his journey. She says, "You were right all along. I truly didn't understand the depths of your depression and anxiety. I didn't understand how real and relentless the spiritual attacks were. Andrew, I want to tell you from the depths of my heart and my pain, I am so sorry. I am so sorry you were scared. I'm so sorry you felt alone. I'm so sorry you felt misunderstood. I'm so sorry you felt betrayed and deeply hurt by the words and actions of others." And that's the one where I just went, well, that's why we got to talk about this again, right? We just got to keep this conversation. I'm sorry you were fighting a dark spiritual war virtually alone. I'm sorry you were unable to fully get the help and support you needed. I mean, it's an unbelievable letter, you know, and but there were some parts. So the thing that resonated, of course, was the feeling of, you know, she said betrayal, and you were hurt by others, and because we're even though this is a much more common topic, we're still trying to figure out how to talk about it well and how to minister to people who are in the middle of it, whatever else. And there were some things in his story, Andy, that I found so interesting. He was preaching a sermon, and it was about hitting a wall, and he was telling his story about how he hit a wall. His dad was diagnosed with leukemia. He had, like, 7 years ago, but that was a 4-year journey. They started having stalkers. Like, a stalker showed up at their house. They had to move. He had a couple of surgeries. And he just kind of hit a wall at one point, and, you know, even admitted that he went to a hospital, you know, for this. He couldn't even be wheeled, like, he couldn't walk in. They had to wheel him in. He was incoherent. And the thing that he noticed that was so interesting to me as a church guy is that, on the one hand, his church life was exploding. You know, he was saying, you know, we've got the biggest attendance and greatest giving budget that we've ever had. He was talking about preaching 7 Easter services and, doing all of that stuff. And then he said, but on the inside, I was crumbling. And what no one seems to notice, or at least comment on in the middle of it, is that those things go together.
Right.
Like the rocket ship up causing the crumbling of the person, right? I mean, he was just saying, well, isn't that an interesting juxtaposition? And I want to say, no, there's a causal relationship between that, right?
Yeah.
That we've been so marinated in the idea of success and performance. I mean, I used to do, Andy, 5 services a weekend, all right? Saturday night, 2 Sunday morning, 2 Sunday night. And I was so empty. I mean, it took literally to Wednesday to feel like myself again. And I was so empty and so depressed. I would go on Monday mornings and I would go to Ruby's, which is a California restaurant, and I would have cinnamon roll French toast, which is the most decadent, carb-loaded, sugary, ridiculous thing. And then, this is for breakfast, and then I would have an ice cream sundae. Yeah, so maybe there's a problem. But what I noticed was the more the church succeeded and the bigger the church got, the worse I felt. And I didn't notice it at the time. I just thought, oh, okay, well, this is God keeping me humble. And it certainly could have been some of that, but I think there was something else going on too. And so this guy, I mean, if you to your eyes, this is the least likely candidate for, suicide. Young, vibrant, kids, ministry, all that stuff. And yet, whatever it was, 12, 13, 14 days after he preaches the sermon, he takes his own life. And the thing that resonated was somebody tweeted out, it's not that people want to die, it's just they want relief. Right. And it seems like everything you try while living doesn't work. Exactly. Right? Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's it. It's there's absolutely a spiritual conversation here, an existence of another will, that's taking place and which you're faced up against, and that's happening. And of course, I think there's also the social pressures that around someone put in that kind of position, in which then you also feel emotionally tied to, meaning okay, I'm this CEO, I'm this senior pastor, I'm this leader. The responsibilities that are on me now that the church is growing, it increases with its responsibilities, right? And I mean, then you question. I mean, you see, there's enough history of other CEOs of big businesses and corporations who fall a lot to the same depression and to the same ultimate failures. Now, some of them may not ultimately end in suicide, but I would venture to guess that the level of depression and anxiety and all of that is not actually so different. So I think that would be a pretty accurate social observation, to look at in the business context of when you give this kind of responsibility under this kind, especially in the church where the role is servanthood. You feel this indebtedness to your community and your people of if I do this wrong, it's not just I blew up my business that I started where I'm selling products. It feels like people's lives at stake, right? I mean, that's right. And granted, there's businesses where lives are at stake. I mean, obviously, car creators and medicine, SpaceX, and in medicine, and all those things are there. Yeah. So I would probably assimilate a lot of similar pressures that you actually see now. And there's so many attributing factors we're starting to observe, the digital anxiety that we experience from constant social media, the over ingestion of information. I mean, it's literally so stacked against us on so many stinking levels. Right. And you have to take all that into consideration when you start these conversations, right? Right. We did a workshop at the church with Carrie, and man, she hit this one aspect of conversation that I thought was so stinking good. She referenced this other guy. I don't have his name right now, but he observed the data research on what happened from post-war Vietnam vets that basically came back, because a lot of them got addicted to heroin and other kind of addictions in that war period from being over there. And they found that when people came back,
if you isolated your addicts and you isolated those who were going through a problem, like they had to go somewhere else to deal with the problem, they found far less success in recovery than those who were brought into the community and maintained connection with people who are compassionate and loving towards people recovering from that situation. So it's, I read in the article how, he went away for a sabbatical to kind of deal with it, right? I mean, we look at isolation or rejection in some ways as a way of trying to solve these kinds of problems, and that is just not it. Right. It's like it's us, I think it's the church, and I think it's family members, I think it's friends. You have to push into connection and really provide a ton of space to understand the problem in order to really do it. But it's like, if we're not, but then you have to start taking an inventory. If you're on the other end and you're dealing with the depression, you have to start taking almost an inventory of what your life is connected to. Where is the time you're investing to be connected with what, and what space have you made? Because if you're just constantly finding yourself in isolation, that is where that spiritual warfare is going to take off, right? Yeah. So
there's, and you're absolutely right that it's so multifaceted, right? It's his personal medical history, his personal personality, right. But there are other things, and that's what you're pointing out. So on the one hand, there's just the culture that is growing increasingly, not only just anxious, anxiety producing, but anxiety provoking, and anxiety like it just floods through the system. From John Mark's Cultural Moment podcast, they did a whole thing
Mark
on
Sayers talked about this. Yeah, it's so good.
But then there's, and you've identified this too, then there's the church issue. Is that just too much to put on one person? And as someone who's been that person, I loved it. I mean, for those of us who love being the center of attention, man, being the center of attention is pretty heady stuff. But there's this, but there's this other thing that I absolutely resonated with. And then of course I read something that was tweeted out: 6 ways to fight when depression descends. Okay.
Oh,
so
right.
Here we go.
I'm holding my breath if this is going to be good or bad.
Well, we'll see. Find trusted spiritual friends. Great. Open your soul to them. Okay. Easier said than done.
Yeah.
Ask them to pray with you. Okay. Pour out your soul to the Father. Okay. Rest in the sovereign wisdom of God, and fix your eyes on the joy set before you and the precious promises of God. Now, it sounds like this was written by somebody who's never experienced depression whatsoever. And if it were helpful, it would be helpful in situational depression. It would not be helpful in clinical depression. So situational depression is, man, I hate my job. And, for the next several months, you're just in this funk. But when the job changes, you change.
Nothing changed. Yeah. Oh, right.
Yeah. And absolutely, man. Spiritual friends, open your soul to them, ask them for prayer, pray to the Father, rest in the sovereign wisdom of God, fix your eyes on the joy set before you. But good Lord, for somebody who, so if you tell these to somebody like Andrew, okay? So here's Andrew wrestling with whether or not to take his own life. And the advice you give him is this advice. Does that
fix your eyes on the joy set before you? Look at how good your church is doing. Look at all the people you influence. It's like, yeah, that's why I'm feeling a lot of pressure here. Right? I mean, it's just like dude, when you're wrestling with depression, nothing seems joyful. You're like, what do I set my eyes on when nothing seems joyful?
And when you're anxious, and this is the one I'm most familiar with, is it's to fix your eyes on anything. Like your thoughts are racing. Yeah. I mean, I've ended up on the floor of my house, just curled up because my brain just feels like it's going haywire. I mean, the last thing I can sit there and do is fix my eyes on the joy. No, I'm not saying that any of these things are bad. I'm just saying, look at how they can be used. Right?
It's just a bad prescription. It's like going to the doctor. It's like, those you can prescribe those things, like you said, situationally, and there may be. And they might work themselves out for some people who have a certain orientation of receiving that kind of thing, but I mean, you can't blanket those 7 things. That doesn't work.
Well, it was just interesting because I'm like, first of all, so let's say you do all of them. Does that guarantee that you're out of your depression? No. And if you do all of them and you are still depressed, what's the natural conclusion you're going to draw? Either God is letting you down or you've messed it up.
Right.
Somehow you didn't rest enough in the wisdom of God. You didn't fix your eyes on the joy set before you enough.
Right. Yeah. Like I've hinged a lot of my, like when I get in the hole on my kind of 3 Mondays per month where I crash, it feels like I can't put my finger on my value. It's like I wrestle with, how do I maintain a certain amount of self-esteem and value, right? Because I try to start taking stock and inventory and like, okay, what have other people said about me that I can hold on to so I can see value in it, because I don't see any value in myself right now. Right. And so but the thing is that 99% of the time happens in isolation for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if I'm sitting with a friend on a Monday, the thoughts don't even come into my mind.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing is just turned over. So it's kind of these, right. And it's like when I'm spinning in that kind of feeling, it just, those things don't, and it's a mixture of both like warring against myself, because I'm trying to put a finger on how do I really understand what I'm doing is important and worth doing? What's defining the worth of my work, right? But then sometimes I can't even convince myself that that's true, when I'm feeling that way. It just feels like I could step away from whatever I'm doing and it just really wouldn't matter.
Right.
Now, whether that's true or not, that's actually how I feel.
Right.
Right. And so, but it's like where, then you have to ask, well, how did I become such a person where that could be such a true feeling, right? When it's just, if I look around my life, it just isn't true.
Right.
Right. Like, it's like, yeah, of course, if I ended my life, obviously like the hole I would leave in my family, like my wife, my 3 kids, like what I'm doing, like at the church and like the relationships and friendships I have there. I mean, like when I start to stack it against, like obviously like that would be a really big deal. A huge value would be lost, but for whatever reason, I still feel that way. And I have a very hard time convincing myself otherwise in those moments. So when I hear those 7 kinds of things and I filter it through that, like knowing when I deal with that kind of thing, I'm like, you see, if I don't think that I'm valuable, then none of that stuff really matters.
Yeah. No, and it's so hard because some of what's said here is absolutely true. You should have people praying for you. You should have trusted spiritual friends. Absolutely. The problem is when the trusted spiritual friends just give you this stuff. Andy, on Mondays, just pour out your soul to the Father. Okay. I mean, so one problem is you can do all of these and still be depressed. Another problem is if you are depressed and you've done all of these, then you're going to blame God or blame yourself. A third problem is it implies that your depression is coming from the fact that you're not doing these things. That if you just kind of lived your life in that kind of way, you wouldn't be depressed. Now, certainly if you lived your life resting in the wisdom of God and fixing your eyes on joy, I mean, absolutely, life would be better, no question about it. But the last problem with it is when you're anxious or when you're depressed, Andy, are any of these things the things that are easy?
No.
Nope. I'm just like you, man. I isolate. That is when I start pulling away, not sharing because of pride or because I'm embarrassed or whatever it is. That's when I'm in absolute utter danger. But I don't have the emotional reserve in that moment to lean in, to trusted spiritual friends and to open my soul. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it was just one of those things. It's like,
Well, my trouble at the core of that issue of that prescription is that it puts all of the work on the person who's dealing with it. Right. It doesn't talk about if like, because there's two angles you play. You can prescribe, like what I constantly find is there's not a lot of prescription for if you are a family or a community around people who are suffering from depression and anxiety and what to do. Now, whatever, a month ago, I sent you an article from Gospel Coalition that I thought was outrageously fantastic. Like the stuff that was said in that article, I was like, that's exactly like in my experience, that's actually been helpful. And it wasn't these like 7 things. I mean, there are all these nuanced things of being like, if you see this happening in your church and you're someone who's a friend of someone who's going through something, it largely looked like the responsibility for you is to press in. Like, don't allow that person to become isolated. It actually becomes a pursuit of, if you know these people, it's more so like you seek to be around. Like, even if you're in the house with someone who's going through it in that moment, that is still a better situation. Like, well, I'm just going to leave you to it and I'll come back later or whatever. It's like, no, like, I mean, it's sitting Shiva. It's that stuff we've talked about. Like, there is actual value in almost like the spiritual sense of communal presence, when someone is going through those types of things. Right. And so that's where you can't like, if anything, it's like, I don't know, for me, it's like 2 things. If you find yourself dealing with depression and anxiety, it's really like with whatever you can find help, tell somebody. Like, it's like that's where it starts. And then the hope is that you're telling someone who will respond in such a way. Right. But that's the danger. That's the fear, is how do I know people will be able to support me as I'm going through this? Right. Because especially if you've got a problematic family dynamic too, right? If you feel like you can't trust your family, or if you feel like you've had a bad history with your family and relationships and emotions, and likewise with friends, likewise with church. And then, so therefore you're just like, what's the point? It's like, I can't, even if I tell somebody, but I think that's why there is such a responsibility for churches to have public conversations about this, because people need to realize they're engaging that seriously. And so it's like, when people do speak up and need the help, we're ready to hear it, right? Not just thinking, oh, your walk is off, right?
Well, and that's where this stuff, when the wife apologized for the people, he felt betrayed and hurt by other people. And it's very often not mean, but it's very often this kind of thing. I mean, I remember in the middle of my darkness, somebody just said, well, if you're fearful and anxious now, how will you be fearful? How will you respond when something really bad happens to you?
Oh, God.
And in one sense, they're right, because, but in another sense, like I feel enough shame. I don't need more shame. I feel totally ashamed. I feel embarrassed. I feel humiliated. I don't need more like, hey, you should. I know I do that to myself. That's part of the issue. I know I'm looking at my life going, why the hell do I feel this way? But I feel this way, right? And I shouldn't. I'm one of the most blessed people in the history of the planet. But that sort of thing, it doesn't help. I mean, I'll never forget. The first time I went through this was years and years and years ago, and it was the middle of this church that was exploding, and he was an older guy. And I didn't know what this was. So, I mean, I had no idea. And he came over when it was unbelievable. I mean, I was my thoughts were racing. I couldn't get my heart rate under control. I mean, it was just crazy. And he just sat across the table from me. He just sat there. And he said, just tell me how it feels. It feels like this. Yeah, man, I know exactly what that feels like. It feels like this. Like he wasn't, I mean, the whole, like, Me Too, not just the movement, but the words, right? That's the power of Alcoholics Anonymous or any of those recovery groups, is that someone's sitting there next to you who knows exactly what it feels like.
Right.
And who's made it. And so here's this guy, and he never fixed, he never gave advice. He just sat there, he's like, yeah, I know how that feels. And the idea, what it opened up in me was the possibility that I'm not insane.
Right.
That there's something else besides my neuroses going on here. Now, whether that's a spiritual thing, which it is, whether that's like the world we live in, which it is, of course, or in the case of Andrew and in the case of just my small experience with it, it's also an issue of how we've set up church and how it is that an entire verdict is rendered on a church by the performance of one person trying to teach the Bible every week, and that the pressure and the stakes and the money, all of that becomes so high that, if you really mess up, man, you're going to lose people.
Right.
I mean, it's so, and I was immersed in this world. So I know this world. I love this world. I mean, if somebody sticks me in front of 15,000 people, I'd say yes instantly. But I've seen the dark side of it, and I'm looking at this guy, because it's not just about mental illness, it's about what we do as a church and how we are to people in the middle of this, and what kind of expectations do we put on people who are on stage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And and are we, and I mean this very, very, broadly, are we complicit in a pastor who feels so hopeless that he can't go anywhere with this information?
Right. I have a hard time saying otherwise.
Right.
Because you don't want to you feel bad, like, saying too, like, because this carries into consumeristic mindset of the church. It carries into
absolutely
all of that. I mean, because it's like, well, I'm not like guilting society here, but in a way, it's like here's the irony of consumerism in the church is that you could choose to do it differently, and yet you don't. Like, it's just almost, you give yourself over to the slavery of the model, but then you act consumeristically and you don't like it, and you just choose to go somewhere else.
Right.
So, but it's like that's a model for how the rest of the thing works. It's like, if we all took this seriously, communally, you could make the choices to do it differently.
Right.
But it's like, if you don't take it seriously and you don't want to put in the work, then it's just like, then it's just laziness. And
people are just going to financially support the rock star celebrity momentum model, right? That's where the big money is, and that's why we do it.
Right. I mean, yeah, it has been. It has been. It has been. I'd be curious to see where it goes. Otherwise, I saw someone post something I thought was really interesting. It was like, and this is all relevant. It sounds tangent, but it's not. Like, it was like, we get real excited to spend money on big brand things that come out, right? Like, oh, this celebrity released a product, so I'm going to go buy that. But yet we're so slow to invest and give money to a relative who's starting a small business. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like, that's the same thing we're talking about here. It's like, right, because it's got a name on it, and because you instantly, by handing a part of yourself over to it, you now feel like you're a part of it, when in fact that larger piece isn't even giving you the whole value back, right? And so it's just perpetuated along the way, because we've kind of lived in this mindset for better or for worse for 10 years of thinking, everybody wants to be a part of something bigger than themselves, right? And we say it's a true thing.
Yeah.
But then again, when did that become an idealized morality? When did that become something that's like we should be pursuing? Why do we need to feel like we're something that's bigger than ourselves? It's like, God is big enough. I mean, when we look at Paul, he's talking about becoming smaller, becoming weaker, so that Jesus' power really exists. If anything, it's like, how do I realize the fullness of like my smallest self?
No. I rebuke that in Jesus' name, man. Come on. You can't run a church. You can't run a church thinking about how to make yourself smaller. That's not how it works, bro.
That's what they say.
Have you been listening to the startup podcast on the church plant?
Yeah, I listened to the whole thing.
Yeah.
I had to.
Yeah, of course you did. Not only because it was your idea first, okay? Startup's a podcast that they talk about the beginnings of things, and it's story formatted. It's really, really cool. So they did one on a church plant, and what was fascinating is that the almost exclusive topic of conversation was about how you grow numbers of people. And of course that's what it is. Of course, when we started Vox, that was an issue, right? Is how you gotta have a donor base. Of course you do, and that's not wrong to care about that stuff. But it is. Go ahead.
Well, the interesting thing about the show is that I think they did a fair job of the producer Eric Menel. He a lot of it was him sharing his own journey. I mean, he's definitely like in a deconstructive state for sure, right? And then he's working with this pastor that was a part of Acts 29 in a church, but down somewhere in the South. And they were even thinking, well, now we might not be able to be a part of them because of some of our theological, directions that we're going. But the tension narrative that we're talking about was just this idea of like he kind of traced their story through like a summer season in which it was dipping, and so it was the pressure of that pastor was because he picked up the torch where a pastor before that started his church left. So the church was handed to him. So the church was handed to him, and then now he was like the minority white guy in a black church. Like the majority of the church is black, right? So there's all of these crazy dynamics happening here. I'll just say this, to let it go, but I still was pretty disappointed in the show overall. There was so many great things to be discussed there, and I just think they could have gone so much deeper on it.
Absolutely,
right?
But what drove the conversation? What drove the narrative arc? What was the tension?
The drama. Well, the drama was based on, is this church going to make it because of numbers and money coming in?
Yeah. And is that legit? Of course it's legit. Absolutely we need money. And absolutely we need resources. No question. That's not the point. The point rather is, our imagination's been captured by such a hollow, shallow view of what churches and pastors are. And one of the reasons for that is that's what gets financially rewarded. So to your point about rewarding small businesses, we need a small church Sunday. So you know how we have, like on Black Friday, you have like a small business Saturday. We need like a small church Sunday where everyone just goes and gives loads of money to small churches. And it's just like, hey, by the way, totally, totally rewarding. So for me, this conversation stretches across just the personal grieving of this man and his family. I cannot even imagine. But beyond that, it's how do we as a church community, how we as a church relate to the people on the platforms. And as he's talking about, hey, the budget's great and people are coming. And then that becomes a trap, and no one's courageous enough to say, "Hey, dude, you should only preach like twice a month."
Right.
You know what I mean? Because right? Even though that'd be way healthier for him, that's messing with like God's favor, or the horse that's driving this thing, or whatever. Right? There's so much risk in not giving people what they want, and so. So I sit and look at this thing from so many different angles because my heart just breaks for the whole thing. And do you send him on sabbatical? I mean, is that like to your isolation point? Like if I were in the middle of something like that, I would want to go on sabbatical, but in a way that would be the worst thing for me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. No, and that's what I mean. I mean, I think if there's an experience to be had, I think there's nuance to how you accomplish this task. Sabbatical, I think, is absolutely a great thing for pastors to be taking. But under these kinds of circumstances, it's more like, okay, well, where do we look for relief? How do we get the relief that you need? And is it like, you just need to come off the stage for a month? But you don't just get off the stage and then hide for a month. It's get off the stage.
No, because what you've done is you're starving the addict of what lifts them out of depression.
Right. And then, so you start to create that binary, almost more dynamic. I got to get back to the thing, right?
Right.
But,
Exactly.
The thing is, I think, and also what we're talking about here is that, and honestly, you've done this well, like over the years of like having this aspect of transparency and reality of like, I'm on the stage today. I'm feeling pretty bad, and it's just like, this week was not a good week. But like many of you, I'm here, and it's like my role today is I'm teaching you this text. It doesn't that's the thing. It's not like the problem is if you're sitting in the room and you think, oh well, that's not okay. I need you to be in a better place so you can teach me this text.
Right.
You see, then that's
the issue.
That's the issue.
Yes, is selective vulnerability. So I'm good if I used to struggle with depression.
Yes.
I'm good if I used to struggle with anxiety. But to stand up and say, I didn't prepare, and I'm a mess, and we're just going to sing today because, I was awake all night and I couldn't control my thoughts.
Right.
It's like. I mean, I have a friend of mine. Okay, so he's a dear, dear friend of mine, and he works for a very well-known Christian institution. He and I have shared a struggle with pornography for years and years and years and years. I mean, he and I go back decades. And he was in the middle of a season of just incredible success in that fight. He yields to that temptation one day for like 15 minutes. And then later he gets this scam email. And evidently these are going around all over the place. I know actually somebody else who's fallen prey to this, but they say, hey, we actually have a video of you watching. And we'll send it out. Unless you do X, Y, and Z. So my friend went to the head of this institution and confessed, hey, there's this thing and there's this email. And then 4 hours later, he was fired. No discussion, nothing.
Yeah.
And
unreal.
Unfreaking real. Now, I'm not saying holiness doesn't matter, and I'm not saying that Christians should have the leader should have like higher expectations for those people. Okay, great. All of that's true. Let's just say all of that's true. But last time I checked, sinlessness wasn't one of the requirements. And so what are you going to do when your favorite Christian leader sins? Right? Because they're gonna. But we've created a Christian culture where you can't say that. I can absolutely say in front of a church, hey guys, I used to struggle with pornography. What I cannot say is, hey, yesterday morning before the family got up, I looked at pornography and masturbated. Yeah. But here I am preaching.
Right.
So, and that's a hypothetical. That is totally hypothetical. So you could never say that. I mean, this is endemic of this incredible. We don't like, and the because I hear people responding. The opposite of this isn't just saying, well, your sin is your sin and you're fine and don't worry about it. That's not what we're saying either.
Right.
But for a guy to be summarily fired without because he brought it forward. I mean, it's just like, come on, this is absolutely nuts. So I can imagine. I am totally guessing here, but this guy puts his heart on his sleeve in front of his church, and I have no idea the reaction he got. I mean, maybe the church was phenomenal. It sounds like the leadership was. They sent him on sabbatical. They gave him grace. Awesome. Nothing about that. I know nothing about that. But you can't help but wonder what were the betrayals he felt. What were the hard things that were said that were meant well. Hey, fix your eyes on the joy set before you and the precious promises of God. Well, that's awesome, except I feel like God's abandoned me. God's absent. I feel like my brain's going crazy and God doesn't answer my prayers.
Right.
So to just willpower myself to fix my eyes on the joy, well, okay. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy.
The answer, I've yet to see the success of depression come down to self-will. Right.
That's part of the problem. Exactly.
Right.
So if it's situational, this is great advice. Like, absolutely. Open up, pray, have people caring with you, talk. Absolutely. But any list that doesn't mention counseling, therapy, or medication isn't a legitimate list spiritually. You know what I mean? Like the idea is that this is some sort of spiritual list. And you're like, no, it's actually not spiritual. Because Gnosticism is this ancient heresy that separated the body and the soul. The soul was precious before God. The body was not so much. Mm-hmm. And anything that's not embodied when it comes to advice given by Christians to the world or to anybody else, if it's not embodied, then it's Gnostic. So this is beautifully Gnostic because look at all of this. Open your soul, pour out your soul, ask them to pray, rest in the wisdom, fix your eyes on the joy.
Right.
Nothing about your body chemistry, nothing about exercise, nothing about sunshine.
Nothing about neurology, nothing about like community and connection.
Yeah. Now they tweeted out after this article got bashed, they're like, these are not meant to be exhaustive. But
sorry. Oh, these weren't really meant to be taken seriously.
Well, no, I mean, it's just one of those. It's one of those things where this is really it hit me. Not that I've ever been at that place. Never have I been at that place. but I've been in some dark places myself, and I know how ridiculous. When I look back at some of what I was going through last year, and some of the ways I was thinking, I mean, they were just warped and twisted, and I couldn't see beyond my own, stuff.
Right.
And I resisted medication for months with this. And I finally changed one medication and started taking some short acting stuff, and all of a sudden, okay, things calmed down. Now that I wish that weren't true. I don't like that, right? I'm embarrassed by that. I'd much rather be the kind of person that isn't taken over by irrational fear. I mean, that's just ridiculous, right? But the time to rest in God and fix my eyes, that's kind of after, like, the biology is settled. You know what I mean? It's like, and that was the big argument that convinced me to take meds was you can't do any of the deep soul work when you're feeling this way. Mm-hmm. Now that's not true of everybody, and I'm not giving counseling advice. I'm just saying, for me, like, once the medicine kicked in, then I was able to do the list.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, absolutely. But here's one of the things, like, I feel like, I mean, I've brought up more recently in conversations, and something I'd love to spend more time talking about is, Paul talks about we're at war with the flesh, right?
Right.
It's like we can, I think a lot of contemporary kind of whatever, I don't know the right word for this, but on it, the conversation of, like, usually trying to understand your influence in a moral sphere is either, I'm operating and walking in God's will, or I'm being attacked by the enemy. But we don't talk about, like, being at war with man or being at war with ourselves, right? Which has to do with, like, if we appreciate, like, the fall of man and actually the long-term degradation of the human body, of the world itself, of nature, and you factor in those things, you realize there is this other war that's kind of taking place. Like, it's like it's as a free will person, I can choose one of two influences most of the time. Either God influences me or the devil has influenced me. However, our bodies, when we become addicted to something, or if we're dealing with, like, form of depression, sometimes I feel like the devil almost puts his hand off, because, like, I don't even need to do anything here.
But see, that's Gnostic. The Gnostic thought is, here's the angel on my shoulder and here's the devil. And it's just a will. It's just a abstract decision about my soul.
Right. So, but it's. I think what I'm saying is that we have to appreciate that. That's right. God is like, there's a certain intelligence that is understood in nature. Like, you have the ability to know when your body is not right. And it's like, and in human agency is that working towards the flourishing of human people works together in order to remedy those things. And it's like, that is still an outworking of God's will, but it might not necessarily be spiritually influential in that moment. Right. But, like, making the decision to exercise, making the decision to seek medication if it's appropriate, making those decisions is acknowledging that it's like, I am at war even with my own body, as I'm decreasingly getting worse in health through the rest of my life, right? And you can't just be like, oh man, that's just spiritual warfare. That's the devil against me. It's like, actually, there's just a little bit of intelligence here you can exercise to realize if you exercise, you will feel better. It's a release of serotonin in your body. There's understanding with the neurology of all this stuff. I mean, there's actual, just factual biological information we have to understand. But it's like, if you choose, it's like, yeah, we have to fight against our bodies. It's part of the fall, but then the spiritual war, that's also this other thing. So that's my point, is that there's usually three wills, and often we dumb it down to two. And so we don't take that other one as seriously sometimes, of, like, realizing, we have to actually work with our flesh a little bit to work against that, so that almost we can be influenced well, right? Which is what we're saying. If you can get your biology a bit in line and work on that, then yes, you can start to enter, like, an understanding of where you're gathering your spiritual influence, and be able to, celebrate the joy in God and look at those things. But if your body is at war with itself, man, it's so much easier said than done. Yeah, no, well said, man. So if you're the praying type of person, if you're a praying type of person, this guy named Andrew, and I don't remember his wife's name. I think it was Kayla. Yeah. I have the article up here. Let me cycle through. Kayla. Yeah. I mean, unbelievable. And we're not,
All we're trying to do is identify things that contribute to people feeling so alone in those situations. The modern job description of the CEO pastor, who's everything to everybody, the frenetic pace of life, the expectations of a church, on and the implicit agreement of the person on the platform with the expectations of the church that yes, I am capable of this glorious awesomeness. Those sorts of things are the things that spill over, and you go, my goodness, we have to become. And the good news is we are, but we have to become the kinds of people who, rather than send this guy away on sabbatical, you just simply say, okay, well, fantastic. Then let's take over some of your job responsibilities, but don't go anywhere.
Right.
Let us just sit, just show up or don't show up. That's fine. And we'll just come over and we'll just sit there and we'll be with you. But we're not leaving you, and you don't have to leave us to get better.
Right. Isolation is different than solidarity, right?
Solitude,
and it's
yes.
It's solitude. Sorry. It's like, and that's the thing. I think there's absolute great reason to take solitude, but not when you're in an unhealthy state like this, because that just becomes isolation.
Right.
And so it's like, there's a difference. And I think I'd put number one at the top of that list instead. It's like, if you're walking along someone or someone's confessed to you that they're dealing with depression, immediately being like, okay, let's talk about when you're isolated, and let's get you out of that and start there, and then you're starting the conversations, and then you're finding all that other stuff. But like, it's just people left alone in these circumstances. It wreaks havoc.
And the people aren't going to want to be with other people. I never wanted to be with other people. So there were times like you or Robles or whoever would show up at my house and just sit there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because I just so hard. So
because it's like, to be honest, it's especially as a pastor, because when I worked at Apple for 5 years, I did not deal with my depression. My depression was definitely on the low pole. Like it was, but I mean, like I was going to work every day, almost seeing groups of people every day. I lived with roommates. I mean, it was just like, the thing is, I almost couldn't be isolated if I tried.
Right.
That's the thing. And it kind of safeguarded, I think that, and maybe it left it dormant because I wasn't dealing with the issues that definitely take me into like my depression, but it probably wasn't until the past like few years, where more of my workloads became a bit more autonomous. With some of the staffs I worked on weren't as saturated. So it was just like, I'm in this office by myself for friggin' 6 hours and I might see a couple people. Like I'd have to really try to go talk to other people to find conversations. They just weren't in front of me. Yep. And I've questioned like my own personal health of being like, I don't know, maybe like how seriously do I take that? Realizing that kind of communal lack of community work environment, is that really the healthiest thing for me?
Yeah.
It's like the work is worth it, but that's just the question. Is the work really worth it? If it ends up taking your life or taking your family away from you, is it worth it?
Right.
Come
on.
So, yeah.
Oh, Andy. All right. Do our blessing, would you?
Oh,
let's wrap it. You got it? You got it? Are you rusty?
Am I rusty? I don't, I'm always rusty. How about that? And we'll just see what happens.
Perfect.
Apologies and grace first. So,
yes.
All right. Well, this was fun. I appreciated this.
Oh man. Love you, Andy Bear.
Yeah, thanks so much to talk about this issue. So, all right. For all of you out there, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord shine his face upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance to you and give you peace.
Amen.
In these days. Amen. Hey, not so rusty.
That was awesome. All right, brothers and sisters. We'll see you later.